Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome each of you joining us today for Ignite Talk Phase 2. We're so excited to have you here with us for another inspiring and practical session, especially one that focused on something we need but we often struggle with CV and cover letter writing. Whether you are here to build your very first CV, refining an existing one, or finally figuring out how to craft a cover letter that actually works, you're in the right place. And I want to thank you all of you for taking time to be the part of this journey, showing yourselves for your future and for your career. Let me start today by sharing something a bit personal. When I first got selected to university, I remember trying creating my very first CV. But here's the thing, I didn't have anything much to add. I hadn't done any major internships, no big achievements, and no fancy titles. I began searching templates online, hoping they'd help me. But most of what I found was made for professionals, people who had done something much more than me. I remember thinking, where do we students like us even begin? Maybe some of you feel the same way right now. Or maybe you have already created a CV but still not sure about that. Like it doesn't really speak for you who you are or what you are capable of. That's why today's session is so important and relevant for all of us today because it's also helping to confident and step forward. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our amazing facilitator for today's session, Ms. Namali Gursinger. With over 12 years of experience in the HR field, Ms. Namali is a passionate and highly skilled HR consultant, certified trainer, and lecturer. She has guided hundreds of job seekers and professionals through recruitment processes, CV reviews, and personal branding strategies. Her specialties include creating ATS-friendly CVs, developing customized cover letters, running corporate training programs, and mentoring future HR leaders through her work with SLIT. Whether you are a student, a job seeker, or someone looking to level up your career documents, you are about to learn from one of the best in the field. So, without further ado, let's warmly welcome Ms. Namali Kurisinga. Over.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the beautiful introduction that was given and a very I think I see there are a lot of participants connecting all from all over the world. So good day to you and thank you so much for joining today's session. So before we go into today's content when it comes to CV writing as well as cover letter writing, why do we need a CV? Can anybody give me the answer? Why do we need a CV? Why are we doing this? Quick answers.
For job getting purpose, ma'am.
Yes, to get a job.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. So just because we have the perfect CV in our hand, say that we got the best design, the content done, written to the perfect, refined CV. Just because we have the perfect CV in our hand, does that mean that we will get a job into our hand? Will that guarantee a job?
No.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes?
Yes, perfect CV can make a job very easy, sir.
Yes. A CV, a well-refined CV is the first step towards getting a job into your hand, right? A good CV will not give 100% guarantee that you will get a job, right? Because the CV, when you have a perfect CV, a well-refined CV, you will get shortlisted for the interviews, right? You face the interviews, you go through the assessments, you go through the interview process, and then from there you will land the job, right? So before anybody see you in person, before they talk to you, before they understand you and your background, the CV is the very first impression a person would get about yourself, right? So what we are going to try today is to understand how best we can do this CV, refine this CV in a way that we can showcase our skills and competencies, right? So again, this does not have to be a session where I keep on talking and you all have to listen. Please ask questions as much as possible, because a question that you would ask will actually help another person when it comes to any clarifications they have. So let's make it interactive as much as possible. And of course, at the end of the session also, we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A, right? So let me share the presentation. Right. I hope everyone can see the screen. All good?
Yes, ma'am.
Am I audible? Can everybody hear me clearly?
Yes. Yes, of
Perfect.
course.
Thank you for the confirmation. Right. So when we look at a CV, right, at a very early stage in our career, especially as a fresh graduate who's walking into the corporate world, there are certain challenges and there are certain opportunities, right? So like Sumaira rightly said, when you're starting the career, sometimes we don't have information in our hand to add. We don't know what to add. Once you proceed in your career after about 10, 15, even 4, 5 years down the line in terms of your work, once you start working, then you will have a little bit of work experience to add. But as a fresh graduate, right, one of the most common challenges we face is what to add into our CV. And then what happens is, right after university, most of the undergraduates will have similar data. You will have your college degree, the education, you will have your advanced advanced O-levels and A-levels. You will have the results of your degree, the dissertation, and it's all common because everybody who is coming into the corporate world will have this common set of data, right? And your application, what we need to see is how best you can differentiate your application from every other undergraduate, right? So you have a common set of data. And then what we need to look at is what is unique about me, right? I have my degree, I have my advanced level results, I have my O-level results. All of that is there, which is common for everybody who's walking into the corporate world, similar to me, my batchmates. Everybody will have similar set of data. But what are the things that are unique about me that I can highlight in this document, right? So it could be the university projects that you conducted, right? It can be individual projects, it can be group projects. Apart from the university, there could be CSR activities or any other projects that you got involved outside the university, right? Where you learn a certain set of skills, right? It could be hobbies that you do. Every hobby, you learn a set of skills, right? So we will look at those things in detail in time to come within the next couple of minutes, right? So we need to identify what are the common set of data that is there, which is common among my colleagues, my peers, my batchmates, and how can I identify these unique data about myself that I can highlight in this document, right? So what we are going to cover today is, first we will understand the purpose of a CV, right? The purpose of having a CV, and then we will see how we can structure and tailor the CV for roles, different roles that we are applying, right? We will identify the transferable skills and achievements, how we can showcase our achievements, numerical and non-numerical, and how can we add hobbies into the CV. And then, of course, we will go into understanding how to craft a compelling cover letter. So when it comes to a CV, now when we apply for a vacancy advertisement, it's not only our CV that will be there in the hands of the organization or the recruiter. Right? Sometimes for a vacancy, there are hundreds and hundreds of CVs that you get. Now, when I post a vacancy advertisement, sometimes I get about 150 applicants, right? So as a recruiter or as the HR team from an organization, sometimes it's not practical for an individual to read word by word in each and every document, right? Especially if you have like 100 plus CVs. Then within this first 60 seconds, each and every, like a recruiter or an HR representative, whoever who gets the CV into their hand, there are certain information that they will quickly look in this document, right? You just do a quick browse, right? So the few things that they quickly look into is they will look at the name and the contact information, right? They will look at your career objective. And if you have worked anywhere, they will look into your work experience. If not, they will look into the most recent educational qualification and the most recent work experience. They will quickly browse on the skills to see the skills that they want, whether it's there in your document, whether it's in line, right? And then, of course, they have a vacancy advertisement that they have posted. So any keywords in the vacancy advertisement, they will see whether you have those keywords in the document, right? We will discuss about that a little in detail in time to come. And then, of course, the layout and the visual, the way your CV looks, it has to be appealing to whoever who reads, right? If there's a document which is cluttered, not aligned, teeny weeny font sizes, it's not appealing to anybody to read, right? Then automatically sometimes if it is difficult to find the information, if there are grammatical errors, if the alignments are here and there, you have one set of data in font size 12, another set of data in font size 9. If there is no proper, like an order or a structure, it's not visually appealing to anybody who reads the document. And also they will gauge the person. Okay, the person looks a little disorganized. They can't get even their CV done properly. Can they really come and do their job in our company? They will judge you, right? By looking at this document, they will judge you, right? So they will also, apart from looking into this information, any recruiter will also look at how visually appealing this document is, right? So within this 60 seconds, these are the things they will quickly browse to identify whether this is a candidate that we are going to shortlist or not, right? So now let's look at the CV structure and some of the key components. Right. So this is a sample document that I have taken, right? So we will go section by section and I will give you some tips on what to keep in mind when we are drafting the content, right? So first of all, the name, right? So when we are adding the name in the document, make sure it's very clear and visually it's in a bit of a larger font size, right? One thing to keep in mind is if you have if your name has 4, 5 kind of initials, right? So now if you take my name, if I have Namali, Anushika, Piyumali, Guru Singha, 4, 5 names, you don't have to add all of it, right? Just add the calling name and the surname, right? Don't clutter. The rule number 1 is don't clutter. Only give the information that is important for the recruiter or the organization to understand your profile. So at the time of the CV shortlisting, they don't need to know your entire name, right? If you have like 5, 6, so many initials, and like in Sri Lanka, of course, you have these Karunaratna Mudyan Selage, right? So you don't have to go through all of those. Just have the first name, the calling name, and your surname. Very clear, right? So that anybody who wants to talk to you and call you, they know exactly, okay, can I talk to Namali if they call or if they come for an interview. Then the second the one below, right, the title. This is where you showcase what you are, the designation that you're planning to apply or hoping to apply for. It could be your current designation or the designation that you're planning to apply, right? Then next, after that, if you have any corporate social media platforms, not Facebook, Instagram, if you're active on LinkedIn, if you have an active profile on LinkedIn, for IT professionals, you have platforms like GitHub. Anything that you are actively involved in, you can add the link here. You don't have to add that entire URL. You just can add the name here and hyperlink it, right? When you right click on, like if you right click on a particular word, you can hyperlink the URL into this, right? So don't add the entire link word, like, copy paste from the browser and just add it to the CV. Again, it clutters the document. Hyperlink it. That is the best way to go forward. And also, if you have any other platforms where you can showcase your professional work, it's good to add the links to those platforms as well. For an example, if you're a UI UX designer, if you want to showcase your portfolio, add the website to that. If you have a website, you can add the link, right? Again, only professional, not Facebook, not Instagram, not TikTok, right? Only the ones that showcases your professional contribution. Then when it comes to your contact details, right? Add a mobile number that the recruiter can reach out to you. I would not recommend to add the home number, the landline, right? Because most of the time, can you all hear me? Were there any distractions?
No, ma'am, it's clear.
Right, okay. Most of the time, nowadays, each and every individual, we have our mobile phones with us and anybody can directly get in touch with you. So don't again clutter and confuse the person who's receiving the document with so many mobile numbers. Have one mobile number where they can reach out to you directly and keep that as the active mobile number. Don't add your mother's number, your brother's number, or somebody else's where when they contact, then of course they will have to speak to somebody and then that person will have to pass the message to you, which can create a little bit of an inconvenience. So have one number. If it can be connected through WhatsApp as well, that is perfectly, it's even more, it's better. But have a number that they can directly get in touch with you, and don't add multiple numbers where the recruiter, it will be confusing for the person to reach out to you. And also, especially at a time when you're applying for vacancies and when you're sharing your CV, you most likely are going to get calls from these companies which are from unknown numbers, right? Make sure that you are on alert to answer these calls on time. And also, if you're not available or say that you're at a lecture, say that you're at a meeting, have the automated message that goes from your mobile when you're not answering the phone, which says, okay, I'm at a meeting or I'm busy right now, we'll call back later. It's much more professional, and it's good to have these practices at the very beginning, at a very early stage in your career, as from now itself, rather than like having to wait until you go up in the career ladder. So have that automated response activated in your mobile phone. So if you're not answering, you get that the message will go to the person. And once you're available, make sure that you revert the call, right? You return the call back, because especially at a time that you're applying for multiple vacancies, it's good to, obviously you will get calls from other numbers. So just keep an eye out, right? And then the email address. This is very important, especially if you all are starting at the very beginning in your career. Now, most of our team, during our teenage time and when we are very young and when we are getting into all this technology, we tend to have this very cool email addresses, right? So we might have normally rocks@gmail.com, right? All these fancy, the funky email addresses. But when you're going into the corporate sector, right? I have seen this in certain cases, and I highly recommend my clients also to remove and have professional email addresses. Have a professional email address for your work, right? Start this at the very beginning of your career itself. If you have a funky email address, keep it for your personal things, but for your corporate life, for your corporate career, create a separate email address now itself, which has a proper email ID, right? You can have your first name, you can have your surname at gmail.com. Sometimes if the name is not available, or if it has been already taken, like if you can't add the name, like full name, you can still have, they will still give you options where you can say, for an example, if you take my name, you can still have N Guru Singha, right? Or Namali G. You can find those kind of alternatives, but don't go into like other words like, rocks, or like, like these cool words. Don't try to use those. Keep it very professional, keep it very cut and clear, and have only one email address. Again, it has to be an email address where you are active, right? And then the other thing is, don't use now this is again applicable when you further progress in your career. Don't add your company's email address into your CV in time to come, right? Always have your personal email address, because this is your personal CV. Do not add the organization's email ID that has been created to you into the CV, right? Because when you're leaving the company, it keeps on changing. You will get a new email address from the new company, right? So keep that aside and have a separate personal email address for your corporate career, right? And then the personal statement at the very beginning, you can either have it as a personal statement where you highlight and summarize what you have done so far, or you can have a career objective as to what you want to do and what you're planning to achieve. But make sure that it is very short. Don't go into very lengthy paragraphs, because at the end of the day, at your CV, we have a limited number of pages at a starting point. When you're starting the career, best to have the CV at probably 1 page. And when you further progress, 2 pages. And then when you have about 10, 15 years of experience, you can go for 3 pages, but nothing more than that, right? So what we have to be very careful in terms of identifying how best we can showcase our skills within these 3 pages. So don't go into lengthy paragraphs, right? So when you start working, of course, you will can add your work experience, right? So when you're adding work experience in this document, right, always be very clear in terms of the designation, the name of the company, and the duration that you have worked, right? So that has to come at the very top, very cut and clear, right? And then when you're highlighting your work experience, it's always good to have some numerical evidence. Now, that is something that organizations look for these days, regardless of the industry, regardless of the position that you're applying for, right? So when it comes to adding numerical evidence, don't wait until the time that you decide to make the CV to look for numerical data and backtrack it for years and years, right? As and when you're progressing in your career, from the day you start working, keep a track of your achievements, right? It can be your KPI achievements, anything numerically that you can back and validate, right? Keep these things on a personal, like, you can have a document, like we hardly use pen and paper these days, but if you're the kind of person who's comfortable with pen and paper, if you have a notebook, have these things noted down, right? On an ongoing basis, any achievements that you have in your workplace, just make a note on it, right? If it is not on, like, you can even have an Excel sheet in your personal laptop. Just put the year or the date, the organization name, and just keep what are your achievements. It can be, like I mentioned before, it could be a KPI achievement. It can be some Like numerical, you can say you have achieved certain sales targets, right? Have a number to it. Don't just say that you achieved the sales target, you have a number, right? Anything for that matter. If any factor that you can back by a number saying you have done this much, this many, this percentage, your achievement was this, have these things recorded on an ongoing basis so that when it comes to the point where you're updating the CV or designing the CV, you can add these things into your document, right? Numerical evidence is a really, it's more than it's nice to have, now it has become a must-have, right? So the only way to keep a track of these things is to make sure that you update these records separately on a day-to-day basis and update the CV as and when it's required, right? Next thing, the next important fact is when you're drafting information in the document, always use the STAR method, right? STAR method refers to situation, task, action, and result. When you're drafting any point or any information in your document, right, always try to see whether you cover these 4 aspects, right? Now, say for an example, if you're highlighting an achievement or if you're highlighting a responsibility, what was the situation? What was the task that you did? What was the action taken? And what was the outcome? It does not have to specifically go by this order, right? But make sure that these areas are covered, right? So again, I'm going situation, task, action, and result. Always try to go around this concept when you're drafting information, right? So even at an interview, when you go and sit for an interview, when they ask for questions, okay, tell me a time that you had to handle a difficult client, or tell me a time that you had to handle this situation, right? So how you go about in terms of answering is you tell what the situation is, what was the task, what is the action that you took, and what was the outcome. And also another thing that you need to keep in mind when it comes to highlighting data in your CV, you always have to highlight what you did, right? Not what the organization did, not what the project did, what was your contribution in that particular scenario, your responsibilities, your achievements, and what you did, right? Sometimes we see these in these documents where they have taken a lot of space talking about the company, right? The company's achievements, the company is this big, this, like, you know, the company has achieved this, that, right? Don't waste space highlighting things that are not directly relevant to you. Utilize that space to highlight what you did. Even in a project, even in any achievement, responsibilities, anything, it has to be about what you did. What action you took? What was the result, right? So it's always about what you did, because at the end of the day, the CV has to showcase your capabilities and your strengths, right? And when you're applying for an organization, they will want to see what you have done so that they can be confident enough to know, okay, if I hire this person, the person is capable of X, Y, Z. So it's all about what you have done, what you have achieved. Next, when it comes to projects, now, especially as an undergraduate, if you do not have any work experience, one area or one section that you can score well in a CV is the projects that you have covered, right? So sometimes when it comes to projects, there are situations where it was a success, or there could be situations where you did a project where actually it ended up becoming a failure. Can happen, right? But it doesn't matter, because even if it is a project that didn't really go well, right? But if you did complete the project, right? There is always a learning from the failure, right? So if there is a learning from the failure, right, you can highlight that in your CV, the final result of the project was this, but the learning out of that is this, right? You don't have to go into lengthier details, paragraphs, big sentences, nothing. You can just go point, right? Just because it fails, don't keep it out, don't remove it, but highlight your learning out of it. That is the important part, right? So when highlighting a project, right, again, keep in mind, we only have a very limited number of space, and maybe it could be 1 or 2 pages. So we have to keep it very simple and concise and only the important data, right? So you can have, again, even for projects, if you can back anything by numerical data, always good to go, right? And then also make sure that you highlight. Take this here. Highlight any tools that you used. You can highlight the impact, the final outcome. Again, go around the STAR methodology, right? And also, like I mentioned before, if it was a failure by any chance, right? Most of the time, these things are always a success factor, but by any chance, if it was a failure, don't omit entirely. Keep it, but always highlight what the learning was. Right? Because a failure is never a negative thing, or it is not something that you look down on, because most of the time it's through failures that we end up learning. So highlight the learning, right? And also when it comes to projects, it does not have to be the university final year project. If you have done any CSR activities outside the university, outside the organization, if you got involved in some voluntary activities, anything for that matter that adds value, or where the skills that you learned can be applicable for the organization that you're applying, you can add that, right? Don't add all random things here and there. Just identify and see the skills, whether the skills that you learned from that project, can it be applied for the organization that I'm applying? If it is a yes, then add it. That's the base to make that decision, right? Then when it comes to education and professional qualifications, right? Always go with the chronological order, right? That's the best way to showcase the most recent. And when it comes to highlighting the details, when it comes to the degree that you completed, or it can be a diploma, right? You don't have to go into detail, going subject by subject and highlighting all the results separately, right? Only take the key points, right? So if you're, say for an example, if you were in the dean's list, that's an achievement, right? Or if you have a very high GPA, which is noteworthy, you can add that, right? You can add the qualification, the university, the year completed, and any highlights. Again, not paragraphs, not lengthy information, just point by point, just the highlights, right? Don't go into O-level results, all the 10 subjects, A, then A-level results, all the subjects, then again going into the results. That itself will take entirely like 1 full page, right? You don't have to go into that kind of detail. Keep it very simple, but if there is anything that you can highlight, add it, like probably the final year dissertation, your GPA, any achievements, or any, like if you were the gold medalist, if you were the batch top, you can add those, right? Take the key points and then highlight only the strengths, right? Again, keep it clutter-free and keep it very visually appealing with just points where they can pick the important information, right? Next it's the skills, right? So any organization will look for the technical skills and the soft skills, right? So when it comes to technical skills, right, always see what the organization is looking for, right? When you're applying for a vacancy, see what the organization is looking for. Identify and see what are the things that you have, right? And anything that the organization is looking for, if you have those skills, make sure you highlight it under technical skills and soft skills, whichever that they're asking for, right? Be mindful with the spellings. Most of this technical jargon can be very tricky. You may miss out on certain spelling error. There could be spelling errors. You be very mindful in terms of the spelling of this technical jargon, and double check before you add all this information. And especially if you're if you're designing an ATS friendly layout where you have to upload the CV into an application tracking system, a recruitment tool, they will do the tool itself will do a keyword mapping against your CV with the vacancy advertisement that they have posted. So make sure these words are properly written down in your CV with no grammatical errors, right? So spelling is a very important factor in all the keywords that we are discussing about. Next is the most interesting part, hobbies, right? Hobbies is something that we can add in the CV in a very strategic way, right? But we need to know how we can strategically word it. We don't have to add 5-6 hobbies in the CV, right? But what we need to understand is every hobby will have a set of transferable skills, right? So if you take for an example, if you're an individual who's doing public speaking and announcing, right? It implies that you have good communication and presentation skills, right? And if the organization that you're applying for is looking for an individual who is capable of communicating in public forums, right? If they are looking for an individual where the role is about training people, or if the role includes doing presentations, board meetings, meeting customers, doing customer sales pitches, then having this public speaking and announcing as a hobby in your CV can be a value addition, right? So if you're somebody who's doing it, and if the organization is looking for somebody who's having good communication skills, add that under your hobbies, right? Dancing and singing. It's all about creativity and teamwork, right? So if there is an organization who's looking for an individual who's into creative work, right? If they are looking for somebody with creativity, adding this hobby will be a value addition, right? So likewise, you need to understand, okay, like for an example, every individual will have about more than 3 to 4 hobbies and things that they do. It could be dancing, it could be playing chess, it could be reading books, drawing, camping, hiking, sports, various kind of hobbies. But don't try to add all of it into the CV. Just see what the organization you're applying is looking for, and add the ones where you can showcase the transferable skills, right? If you feel like, okay, the organization for this particular vacancy, this skill is going to add value, and I need to show that I have it, add that into the CV, right? So these are some of what you can see in the slide are some of the examples that I have taken for you to get an idea of how certain hobbies will give you a set of soft skills that can be applied in the corporate sector, right? Next comes the certifications and online courses. Here, now this is also a section that you can add, because nowadays, compared to 5-6 years ago, a lot of individuals do online courses. We have enough and more material available. It could be LinkedIn, it could be Udemy, it could be Coursera. There are so much of online platforms where we do short courses, where we do short online courses, right? So when adding courses and certifications, again, one thing that you need to be mindful of is, if you have done about 10-15 courses and certifications, online certifications, don't again try to clutter the document by adding all of it, right? There was one time where I had a client where the person has done about 30, 40 online courses, right? And one full page of the CV is gone just to have all these courses listed down, right? And there is no space to add any other information. So in such situations, doing courses is always good. Getting certifications, online courses, educating yourself, upgrading your knowledge, really good. I always encourage, so keep on doing it. But one thing that you need to keep in mind when adding this into the CV is to add the courses that are directly applicable and relevant to the job that you're applying, right? If you're applying for a job vacancy that looks for marketing skills, add only the courses that you have done around marketing and digital marketing, right? You may not have to add all the HR related courses and all the graphic design. Maybe you can keep them out, right? But you have to make that decision very carefully by looking at the vacancy advertisement. What are the courses that are going to add value to this place that I'm going to apply for? And add only the ones that make sense. Don't clutter with unwanted information, because what happens is, say that you add you have done about 15 online courses and you have added all the 15. So the person who's reading the CV actually has to go through line by line to figure out what are the ones that are applicable, right? So don't let the other person, like, they will have to take time to figure it out, right? And mind you, a recruiter again will have about 100 CVs in their hand, and then they will only do a quick browse sometimes, right? And if you have 15 online courses, right? And if they don't have time to read line by line by line by line, they might actually miss out on it. Even if you have done relevant, applicable, directly relatable courses, right? So to avoid that, the best thing to do is to only keep the ones that are relevant to the vacancy that you're applying. Other things, keep it in your CV, it's okay, right? But when you're applying, you do that customization, remove the unnecessary data, and only keep the ones that are relevant. Then adding references. Non-related references, adding details of references is not a must. It's optional. There are certain vacancies, when you see the vacancy advertisement itself, you will see this line saying, share the CV with 2 non-related referees. So if they have specifically requested for the details, yes, you can have it in your CV. But if not, it's not a must to add the reference details into your CV, right? Because most of the organizations, 99% of the time, they do have the background verification that will happen after the recruitment process is done. So at that time, they will definitely connect with you and request for the information. So maybe you can have a line saying reference details available upon request, which is again implied. And you can utilize that space to add more information about yourself, your achievements, your skills, your qualifications, your work experience, right? So you have to be the judge of it, where you see the vacancy advertisement, see whether they have specifically asked. If they have asked for it, please add, don't miss out. Even the photograph, if they have specifically asked for a photograph. Now, if you're applying for a cabin crew, front office, sometimes they specifically, in the vacancy advertisement itself, they say, please add a photograph, recently taken corporate headshot. If so, make sure you add that into your CV and send. If not, it's optional. But you have to read the vacancy advertisement word by word and understand what they're looking for, and then make sure you customize your CV according to that. So references are optional. If they have asked, make sure you add it. If not, you can utilize that space to add something about yourself and have a line which says it's available upon request. Right. So now let's look at how to customize the CV according to the vacancy that you're applying. Right. One thing, the base rule, the basic thing that you need to keep in mind is avoid sending the same CV to every position and every organization. Yes. Any question? I will take it as a no. Right, okay. So going back again, let's see how we can customize the CV according to the vacancy, right? The baseline again is don't send the same CV to every position and every organization. This is a common mistake that I see happening. Now it's becoming less and less because we are creating a lot of awareness around this. Always you make sure you do the customization according to the vacancy that you're applying. This doesn't mean that you're going to copy paste the vacancy advertisement, the work responsibilities, and copy paste it in your CV and say, I have done this. Okay, here's my CV, right? That's not how we are going to customize. We identify the keywords in the vacancy advertisement, see what are the things that they're asking for, right? And then you have to do a self-evaluation to see whether I have these skills. Honestly, right? We don't add false information into our document. We do a self-evaluation and see, okay, according to the vacancy advertisement, they are asking for X, Y, Z requirements. Do I have those? First question is, do I have those, right? What are the things that I have from the things that they're asking? They're asking for 5 things. Do I have all these 5, right? So, okay, say that you have all of those 5 as a person. I have those skills. Then you have to go into your CV and see, okay, have I showcased those 5 sections in the CV very clearly, right? Just having it is not enough. You have to make sure that in your CV, you have highlighted it enough for the person to see it. Not like somewhere hidden in like, at the very last page of the document or in a very tiny, like a small place. You have to highlight it, right? So first you read the vacancy advertisement, you see whether those 5, if they have asked for 5, hypothetically, see whether you have those 5. Then you see in your CV whether you have those things highlighted well enough, right? So do your research properly. Don't copy paste the vacancy advertisement and don't include irrelevant experience. Just because they have asked for it and just because we really so badly and desperately want the job, don't add things that you have not done. You may get shortlisted by doing that. But when you go for the interview and when they start questioning and if you can't answer because you have not done it, that creates a bigger negative impact than not having it, right? When you can't answer the information that is there in your CV, if you don't know to answer, that looks really bad on you. So make sure that you don't add irrelevant information, only add what you have done, where you can highlight it further, right? So we did discuss about adding hobbies and interests into the CV, right? So I have added some examples here in terms of how to showcase your soft skills, right? So if you take something like drawing, writing, photography, it showcases your creativity, attention to detail, patience, and self-discipline. And if you take a team sport, teamwork, communication, leadership, resilience, right? And then if you take something like performing art, it shows confidence, again, good communication, good presentation skills, adaptability. So these are all soft skills that you can have. And then if you do meditation, yoga, journaling, still there are certain skills that you learn from those. Good for your emotional intelligence, self-awareness, stress management. Organizations do look for these things. And if you are into DIY maker projects like, coding, sewing, problem solving, critical thinking, initiative, technical curiosity, right? So understand the skills that can be transferable, and highlight those things in your CV. So these are the unique information. You have, at the very beginning, I spoke about common data and unique data. So these are the places that you can highlight your uniqueness in the CV. Right? So now let's look at how to draft a cover letter. Right? So when you're drafting a cover letter, the ideal structure, again, cover letters don't go into pages and pages and pages. It's a one-page document that summarizes the entire CV, but with a little bit of additional data, right? So first of all, you need to introduce as to who you are and why you're applying, right? So make sure you cover this segment. Then you have to say why you. You have to convince the organization and say, why do they need to choose you and not the other person? Right? So there you need to connect the skills and all the experience to the role. You have to say, you have to prove yourself and say, this is why you need to hire me. I am good at X, Y, Z, and these are the things that you are looking for. So you have to say why you. Right? You have to convince the person and say, I'm the one for your job. I'm the one for you. Right? And then why them? Why you want to work at the company? Right? So you have to do a little bit of research and understand about the company and see what their values are. Right? And see whether it's in line with your values and what you want. Right? Then you need to say why you want to work at the company. Right? So why them? What is it in them? What is it that in that company that you want to go for, right? And then the last para, when you're wrapping it up, right, you can add a call to action, right? You can have a polite closure and then what the next step is, right? So you can have that closure and then end the letter. All of these sections, again, you don't have to go into lengthier paragraphs, right? But make sure you cover these 4 segments. Who you are and why you're applying. You need to prove yourself and say why you. Why should they choose you and not the other person? And why them? Why you want to work for the company, right? Because they also need to know that you're interested for X, Y, Z reasons. And then, of course, the call to action, right? Keep it very concise, just 1 page, right? And personalize as much as possible, right? You need to address to a person. If there is a person, if you know whom the person that you're addressing, make sure that you address it to the particular person, right? And avoid cliches like, I'm a team player, I have excellent communication skills. These are very vague cliche lines, right? Rather than saying you're a team player, you can say that you're a member of this particular sports, or you have done this sport. When you say you're like a rugby player or a basketball player, or you're a part of this team, it implies that you're a team player. Rather than saying you have excellent communication skills, you can say you represented the university at this particular forum, where you addressed a gathering of this many number of participants. That implies that you have good communication skills. So don't say you have excellent communication skills, you highlight with an example, right? So those things are the important factors to keep in mind, especially when it comes to a cover letter, or even you can add these points into your CV, right? So with that, I think we have come to the end of the session. We have a couple of minutes in hand. Any questions? Any areas, any questions that you would like to discuss?
Madam, a small thing to be clarified. So can you briefly explain what is the difference between CV and resume?
Sorry, come back again.
Can you briefly explain the difference between CV and resume?
CV and resume. This actually is a term that is being used by different, I think, different regions and different countries. They use this term differently, but again, can I know which country you're from?
I'm from Sri Lanka, madam.
You're from Sri Lanka. And may I know your good name, please?
I'm Achira.
Achira, right? Okay. So in Sri Lanka, of course, even though you call it CV and resume, more or less the template that is being used is the same, right? There is no hard major of a difference because the structure and the template both are the same, and there is not much of a difference, even though the term is being used simultaneously by different at different instances, right? If you look at the two templates, again, if you follow the set of information that I guided you through, that basically covers this particular document, right? So you don't have to worry about whether it's a CV or a resume. If you are you starting, where are you in your career? Are you an undergraduate or an experienced employee?
I graduated a couple of years ago. So I'm currently in
How many years of experience do you have?
2 years. 2 years.
Yes, right. So if you follow the structure of information that I guided through in this document, that will kind of satisfy the requirement. So you don't have to really worry about understanding whether this is a CV or a resume. Just follow the sections that I mentioned and then draft the document. The only thing that I would kind of highlight is the ATS factor, the application tracking system friendly factor, if you're applying for an overseas vacancy. So that is something that is very important if you're applying for, whether you're applying for local vacancies or overseas vacancies, just make sure that your document is ATS compliant. That is important.
Okay, madam. I got you.
So if you now it's not much, I don't have much of time to go into detail in terms of explaining what an ATS compliant document is, but you can actually connect with me offline so that I can go into detail and kind of brief you on that if you have plans in terms of applying for overseas vacancies, especially overseas vacancies.
Oh.
Right? All good?
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. I got it.
Anything else? I think do we have time for Q&A?
If they have questions, we can next session.
Okay. Anything else?
Since no one is asking anything, so I think we can conclude the session right now.
Right.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Namali Kurusinghe, for the incredible help. Okay, we have a question from Alessina.
Yeah.
Ask.
Thank you from you and your guest in this program. Let me ask my question like this: that what are some common mistakes in CVs that we should avoid?
Mistakes.
Yeah, common mistakes.
Right. Okay. So common mistakes. One is sometimes when it comes to personal information, there are instances where we tend to add the gender, the date of birth, marital status, full address. You don't have to go into those details, right? That's one of the common mistakes that I see in the CV. You don't have to use, unless it is being requested, don't go into lengthier like personal details, don't go into that extent unless requested. If not, just keep your name, the title, the contact number, and your email address. right? So that is one of the common mistakes that is there in that we see in CVs that you can avoid. And also when it comes to explaining details, don't go into lengthier sentences, right? Keep it very concise to the point. Use the STAR method that I explained when it comes to explaining a point. Just cover those aspects, but again, not lengthy paragraphs, not lengthy information. Another mistake that I see is the page number, right? Especially at a starting point or even an individual with about 1 to 2 years of experience, maintain the CV within maximum 2 pages. Internationally, there are certain regions that look for, they will specifically, they don't encourage a 3-page CV. The maximum is 2 pages, certain regions in the world. Or if you have about 15 to 20 years of experience, just going for a 3-page CV is acceptable. But you need to make sure that you maintain this page number and showcase your strengths within this page limit, right? And another mistake is using very small font sizes.
Yeah.
Right? So don't go beyond font size. Like there are a lot of font styles, right? Again, don't go into very uncommon, very just to make it look artistic. Don't go into use very straightforward and commonly used font styles like maybe it's Times New Roman or Arial. Go into commonly used font styles, right? And keep the font style somewhere between, don't go below 10 maximum. Like I have seen CVs with like 9, 8. It's very small. It's not very appealing to the eye for anybody to read. And it can be difficult to pick information, right?
Yeah.
So that's also another mistake that I see. There are a lot of mistakes, to be very honest, but on top of my head, these are the things that I see quite often.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks a million for your guidance.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Any other questions? If you have any questions, Zumaira, can we share this presentation with the participants today?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Right. I do have my contact number and my email address mentioned here. So if you have any questions or anything, even later, I'm active on LinkedIn. I'm active on all of these social media platforms. So if you have any questions, do connect with me directly. LinkedIn is the fastest. I think I'm quite active there. Or you can connect me on WhatsApp. So if there's anything, I can take it up offline and clarify any doubts or any questions that you're having. I can go into more detail than this when I'm answering questions also.
Thank you very much for your time and also for your patience. Have a good day and be successful in every field of your life.
Okay, we can conclude the session, I guess. So thank you so much, Ms. Namali, for the incredibly helpful session. I think it would be helpful for anyone who's, even if they are a student like a school leaver or an undergraduate or fresh graduate also. And it's happy to see that our participants, that they have very much interacted the session, and few of our participants, they have put messages in the LinkedIn. It was from Samuella Sahar. He's saying it was very crystal clear and a clear one. It's really happy to hear this. And Miss Ahika Firdaus, she's saying, thank you, ma'am. I got an idea to how to create a perfect CV. And from Samuella Sahar, thank you so much for everything. And before we end, before we leave, let's turn on our cameras and for a quick photo. So give us your brightest smells, and this is so part of our journey. We are so proud to show you also. We want to see more faces. Okay, let's take a picture. 1, 2, 3, stay tuned. Thank you, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining our session. Keep in touch with us so we have more sessions regarding these professional upskilling. And thank you again for Ms. Namali. So for the confirmation of this session in a very short time, and you'll be get to see her in the session, I think in 3rd August regarding email writing. Keep in touch with us. Good eye for everyone. Thank you. Bye. Good night.